Hi, I'm Heather Box from the Million Person Project, which is a global project about love, storytelling, and connecting change makers. And I am here today with the wonderful Kate Power. Kate Power is the founder of Fleet Jewelry and is an incredible artist and creative in the world. So why don't you just introduce yourself?
I'm Kate Power. I'm a designer, artist. I have been designing jewelry out of a closet since I was 16 years old, and I guess things grew over time. And in more recent times, I've been doing garments with hardware-based stuff, primarily for musicians and stage. And even more recently, painting and doing all sorts of things to like work my way through a different side of a creative self.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm really excited to be talking to you because I love you, and I think that you and your work are really interesting. And I'd love to start off just by asking you a question about stories in general and personal stories. And for me, I just would love to hear you speak on the risk of not telling your personal story.
I think when we go out into the world and we tend to have a story in which seems associative to the world and makes sense and be sort of polished. And I think all of us wandering around without telling really the truth underneath end up in this society or end up with this feeling of isolation that perfection is what we're striving for and that you're less than in some way, or that if you were to expose that side of yourself that you would be at risk. And in fact, all of us without exposing that are at much higher risk in our interpersonal ability to like connect with each other, in our ability to really have authentic relationships, in our opportunity to like really do what it is that we want to do in this lifetime and to share it with others. I think without really digging into who it is that we are most authentically and really sharing that, like it's a dangerous place for human beings to be like in relationship but not really with one another.
And times in your life when you haven't been telling your story, why haven't you? And what was the story that you weren't telling or aren't telling?
I mean, I would say there have been many times in my lifetime, like I've been on my own since I was very, very young. Around 12 years old, my family sort of split off, and my mother had some things to deal with her mental health and her health, and my father met another woman, and I ended up in our family household on my own, and at that time it was very dangerous to share with educators or family or anybody that I was actually on my own for risk of being sucked up into the system and placed in all sorts of like my life path would have been. So there was a huge amount of hiding and disguising what was actually going on and becoming this person that was like really strong and had it all together and pretended that everything was okay. The thing is that it's always very obvious what's going on for all of us behind closed doors. Like I think, whether or not there's closeness or not, you can see it in each other's eyes. And there was a lot of support that was coming for me at that time that I was too busy hiding, making sure that everything was A-okay, or seemingly so. We end up not allowing support and love and a certain amount of softness in, I think, to our lives. So I would say that it started then, and there have been roller coaster times where it's like, okay, and then it's like this massive catharsis, like burst, like this is actually what's going on. And it's, for me, generally been artistic. But again, there's that level of like, that again, not necessarily wanting to share that artistic combustion, or because like, oh my God, it's terrifying. And then more recently, this last year has been really, really difficult, and I manage a brand and everything's polished and everything's great, and you don't want to seem like this vulnerable person in the world, but really I've had the hardest year of my life. And trying to kind of, that same, like, keep up with the Joneses, like, keep it all tucked away behind closed doors, I think is the cause and root cause for a lot of people of depression, of mental illness, of not having, becoming dissociative in the world, being blocked, not allowing, not really allowing love in. And when I mentioned like this, like more recently, like painting, like I had a very, very close man in my life. He passed away, and I kind of blacked out and went into this state of creation where I actually fully purged and told the story of what was actually going on for myself, and I filmed it, which was bizarre. I'd never done anything like that. And very scary, depressive times. And I was encouraged by a very dear friend of mine to share the piece that I'd done, and I was terrified. I was like clammy, and like I felt like I was gonna throw up. Like the idea of sharing something so vulnerable of what was going on was like paralyzing and terrifying. But what ended up happening is I did go ahead and share it, and what happened was there was this huge outpouring of people that, with his death as well, like felt like my process was a process that they needed to witness in order to feel like there was some processing going on, you know? And it was a real gift to a lot of people that had been experiencing the same loss and been experiencing the same sort of questions about what it all meant and what, you know, and and also what it looks like to move through something as intense as death, or to move through something as intense as any kind of loss. I think there's a risk of not sharing. If you're not sharing your story or where you're coming from, it doesn't really allow or give permission to other people to share and to stand for you, and to you know, that we're all actually all sort of the same. And it's funny that we're hiding. Mm-hmm.
And was it an email? Like, did you decide to push send, or how did you send it?
I actually posted it to Facebook, which I haven't posted anything to Facebook in like over a year.
What gave you the courage to push post? Because I can tell you that I personally, you know, and I know that so many of the viewers too, mm-hmm. like we get on the edge of sharing something about ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's like just the act of like send, click, or call, or
it was horrifying. I honestly was like in sweats, like top bun, had been thinking about it for like 5 hours, just like pacing around, like, oh my God, are you really gonna, you can't do this, you can't do this. I like came up with a time, like my birthday was on the 12th, his was on the 21st, and I was like 12/21 on 12/1. Like, you have to do it by 12/21, like that represents, like, just do it. And then when I hit send, I honestly went into like shock. I was like, oh my God. And then I like kept checking it, and I was like, I wanted to pull it down. But within a couple of hours, the kinds of responses I was getting was just like so powerful that, you know, and there was so much gratitude for other people being like, wow, like this is a process, like this is important for you to share. People don't know how to process this stuff. Like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I felt like more nourished in that sharing and that then dialogue than I could have definitely in isolation.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really underpins my work is the idea that your truth will set us free, mm-hmm. that your truth sets you free and it sets me free, mm-hmm. or it invites me to set myself free. Mm-hmm. And that's what it makes me think of, is just like in our grieving, in our, you know, in all parts of our life, and the mm-hmm. ones that as a society we deem negative or positive, like so much of it we hide. Mm-hmm. Like it's too something to share, you know? And it really, you know, for me, it's really about honoring yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's like when you posted that, like you were honoring yourself, and you were honoring, you know, the man that you lost. Mm-hmm. And in that honoring, you were in turn honoring the viewers. It's like when you tell your truth for you, like, you honor everybody involved. And it invites, it sends out an invitation for them to be all of who they are too. And that's what I think is so beautiful about what you're saying.
Yeah, and what you're doing in the world, which is setting that free in people.
Yeah, and one of the things that I feel, you know, there's parts of us that we share, there's parts of us that we don't share. What's on the edge for you now? Like, what is your next step in sharing who you are with the world and allowing yourself to be known?
That's a really interesting question. From the ages of 20 to 28, I was like supporting like emerging talent, you know, in like their voice, like basically like ensuring we had in Canada that we had like funding and things that were going towards these artists to like, because of the importance I felt of these hobbyists and emerging artists to actually choose art as a profession. And it came to a point where I was like, you know, they had chosen that, and then they were in the same sort of thing where it was like, okay, now they were professionals and they were having to move through what it was that they were going through emotionally, but suddenly it was like for market, you know, and what was going to be marketable. And I felt like a fraud. I've almost ignored many parts of like how I used to process emotional transition as a child, you know, things like dance, things like painting, things like eye contact with strangers in the street, things like, you know, drawing for the sake of drawing. You know, we accumulate our tools as children to move through things, and then as the years go on, you know, you don't make time for them in a certain way. And having chosen my livelihood also is directly related to my ability to create. And now, like where I'm at right now is there's so much that I need to explore creatively, like almost as a child again, to process a lot of the things that are coming up for me. And those things aren't going to be necessarily for market. It's like you sit down to create something, and now I've trained myself to like make them in a way that like is going to be understood or is going to be somehow like desired by another person. And I think, you know, the work can become less and less and less authentic over time. And right now there's this like sort of like door that was opened with Trent's passing that's like, wow, like you remember how to process things. Like, so, you know, in facing things like, I think we can face things like depression, things like isolation, things like not remembering sort of who you are and just like carrying on. That door was swung so wide open with that moment that and what I want to put is like, it's like the processing of the piece was one thing, but the sharing of that level of like vulnerability was so much a part of the healing. And I think in this next like phase for me that I need to continue on that exploration. And it might not, you know, I'll do it in all the many facets in which that I know how to create from, you know, and move through things. And I'm committed to sharing that. For the first time in a long time, I haven't been sharing my work. I haven't been sharing anything. Nothing has been good enough and all the rest of it. And I think I'm committed in the next little while to like be as vulnerable as I need to be and really share that openly. And it's an experiment. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if I'm going to, you know, survive financially. I don't know if people are going to relate to it. I don't know if I'm going to come off as insane. I mean, that piece that I'm like sleeping in that painting. I shared it. It's like insane. Like I'm insane, you know. But what is the option? Like the alternative is to just like keep it inside and like make sure somebody has the trendiest of earrings or something. Like I can't do it right now. It's not. I can't get up every morning and do that right now. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes me think about the different currencies of the marketplace. It's like there is the currency of money, of like exchanging goods for money. And then there's you know, like the currency of love, the currency of connection, and it's like, what marketplace are you committed to? And if sharing yourself, my belief is that when you share your most authentic self, and when you're willing to be all of who you are in front of the world for yourself, that what, you know, that the love that you need, the support that you need to sort through the practical parts of living, being a human here, like, they come so much easier. And so I just really encourage you to share your work, to share your process, to share who you are with us, because we are here to, like, you know, the viewers, me, like, we will receive you. And the right people will, and it's not everyone, it's not 100 for 100, you know? But if it's 3 out of 100 even, of people who resonate with you and what you're saying, that support can go, that can really, really take you to places to where you want to go. So if you were going to say, so what you know, knowing some about your story and hearing you mention you've been on your own since 12 and things like that, what, you know, been on your own since 12, like, didn't go to school, like, what role has that story played in your life? And when have you decided to share or not to share? And what's your relationship with it now?
I mean, I think that I've been quite open about sharing that in a way, because in a way it's been the thing that has sort of given me cred, you know? Like, like this, like, strong, badass chick that, like, can do it herself, you know? And, you know, we're in New York City, it's like amongst some of the most, like, academically, like, you know, we're amongst this time where academics, and I mean, I haven't gone that route. I definitely have just, like, picked things up from the streets and, like, carried on, and had some amazing teachers along the way, and looked for mentorship and looked for support. And I think I share the story of, like, where I come from quite openly, as I said, because it's like there's a certain amount of credibility that, like, I've come off as this, like this, look what I've done, you know? And for sure there are times I don't necessarily share that story, you know? But I think, you know, the thing is that, like, there's an identity that comes along with that story that, you know, one of, like, being super strong, one of, like, having it all together on her own, one of, like, having to have control over everything all the time to ensure that, like, my own survival is covered, not letting people in a lot of ways, not being worthy of love and support. So not the thing, like, that I'm doing things wrong in a way because I've, like, had to, like, make them up as I go along, and not trusting that. And that identity is, you know, has in lots of ways gotten me to where I am today, both for the good and the bad. And I think I, you know, have focused primarily on, like, the like, yeah, like, I've been blessed, like, you know, look at, you know, where I've come and through all of this, and I somehow my spirit chose this path, you know, chose that, and but I think, yeah, I think that there's, like, a certain softness that I haven't provided for myself, or, like, allowed in, that, like, that there is, you know, the you know, this like strong chick instead of like this like softer, like you taking care of like who I am in the world, or who, like, yeah, that I am lovable, or that it is good enough, and that the people that I'm like, you know, my peers, that I'm still good enough, even though I've had this other different kind of like way of getting here. So yeah, I don't know. It's like it's a bit of a duality.
If like the story has been the story that you have subscribed to and that has supported you in some ways and not in others, has been like Kate Power is strong. She can do it on her own. Like what do you want to invite in? What's the evolution of that you want to invite in for this next chapter of your life?
I think that, you know, something that you asked me before we started filming was like, how did you learn to love? Or like, how did you let love in? And this really ties in for me now, because this like super strong person that's doing it alone, there's obviously like this block around like really allowing love in and really allowing myself to share love in a way. And when you asked me that, the way I answered that was that there's like a subtlety. There's like it's not in language, and it's not in, you know, a big birthday party, and it's not in all of these other, like, there's like a subtlety that I've learned since I was very, very small, that was like a glance across the room, an eye contact from even a stranger in the street. A shared experience, you know, you and I sitting in silence together and just like sharing that energy. And, you know, I really, really feel it so much with children and with like elderly people, like this shared, like there's this just trust, like, and there's so much more in that, in a way. And just in a, you know, to sort of like return to that sort of form of peace for myself, and to like create from that peace and to share from that peace, and to trust and surrender in a way. There's like a softness. You know, I feel really like I'm a really sensitive person. I'm way more sensitive than I am strong. And I think sensitivity and vulnerability is like the source of power. And I think for a long time, the idea of being strong has been like my source of power. But strength means carrying a lot, you know? And sensitivity and being empowered is an internal, like, having it, not carrying it.
Can I'm sitting in front of you, and the viewers who are watching this, like, in what ways can we support you in, you know, connecting to that softness, like, to staying in touch with love?
I guess it's just about like sharing, like that it's almost like I need like accountability and sharing like what I'm creating or what I'm up to from an authentic place, you know. I mean, that's like I honestly don't know how to ask thousands of people that I've never met or don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot, you know, we're very connected to one another. And it is good to be able to look each other in the eyes and say, you doing this supports me in being me. And so I believe that it's good to get good at answering that question. And just in closing for me, you being yourself and sitting here right now and answering the questions when I ask them to you, and I can tell that you're thinking about it and you're present and what you're saying is resonating with yourself, that supports me in being me. And you model what it's like to be present.
Here's one thing that I would say, that I've got an idea of a project in order to explore some of these like more sensitive and maybe just like, you know, like the creator's like hard drive is like full and I feel like I need to move through like some of these ideas that I've had or been sitting on, or maybe I need to like sing a song, maybe I need to like choreograph a dance, like I need to be moving through, I need to paint a chair, like things that aren't. And I had this idea of doing a project called Make Way, which means essentially making your way through a time and giving myself a time limit, because we all tend to, you know, procrastinate or whatever, for 30 days, every single day, doing a project and documenting the process and sharing it. And some things that I will be creating will be for sale, and some things will be, maybe I'll learn to DJ one day and do a playlist that's really important to me, and maybe it'll be by donation for your yoga or your meditation or your lovemaking or whatever. It's a project that is on my mind that I haven't shared with anybody and I haven't started, and I guess it's something that I feel would put me in sort of an accountability for me to actually move through some of this stuff and to share it. And yeah, so I guess the ask would be like, do you think that's a good idea?
Okay. So
Would you like to see me do that?
I would. I can only answer for myself, but I would. And where can I find you? Like, where can I find your work? FleetJewelry.com, but that's not really more of my personal work. But I have a website that I haven't put anything on yet called Kate Power. And what about, how can we stay connected to you via Instagram?
Fleet Jewelry, at Fleet Jewelry.
At Fleet Jewelry?
Yeah, and jewelry is spelled very strange, Jewelry.
Okay. Kate Power of Fleet Jewelry here with us today. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.